Some of us are outwardly successful, but inwardly feel unhappy and living a life lacking in purpose and meaning. The Necktie and the Jaguar by Carl Greer can help you discover what's important to you and how to go for it. For more information or to purchase the book, visit carlgreer.com. That's CarlGreer.com. Welcome to Adventures in Consciousness, the interactive show that offers expansive conversation with pioneering new thought teachers and personal real-time guided journeys into the imaginal realm to access your soul's wisdom and discover how to live your greater story. Here is your host, human potentialist, soul mentor, and consciousness guide, Jennifer Evanko.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation. We're in for a real treat today. I have my dear friend, Sandie Sedgbeer, here with us to join the conversation. Sandie is a professional writer, a broadcaster. She cut her teeth in the ultra-competitive world of British newspapers and magazines. She's the author of 6 nonfiction books published in major international publishing houses, and an editor, ghostwriter, and coach of countless other writers and authors and potential writers. She's the founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club and a veteran talk TV host, show presenter, who is currently hosting OMTimes Magazine weekly flagship radio show, What's Going On. She's also co-host of the live video stream and radio podcast, Cracked the Podcast, Slaying the Dragons of Mental Health. Sandie combines her love of conversing with leading thinkers, scientists, authors, educators, and spiritual teachers, author with her work as Resonant marketing, media, and book and magazine publishing consultant. Sandie Sedgbeer, welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for having me.
I'm laughing.
It's too much to get through, isn't it?
It really is. I'm laughing because I'm usually, Sandie is the one that taught me how to do this. And I just...
I should cut that right down for you.
Thank you. Anyways, Sandie, so I'm really excited to talk today because I know how much of a curious mind you have and a searching. You like to dig in and find out the information. But I wanted to start back with where this began for you, where your journey began in studying, being excited about consciousness and just wondering what more there is out there. How did that start for you?
Well, I was a very early reader and a very, forward reader. I read way beyond the books that I should have been reading at that age. But I think really where it all began was fairly early on in my life. I knew that there was a lot of information out there. And I could not bear the thought, as a good Gemini who wants to know everything, I could not bear the thought that I was going to die and not know it all, And I think that really propelled me into reading everything I could get my hands on. Every new thought, every idea that came out. I was talking to someone yesterday about some of the early books that influenced me. And, back in the 70s, the 60s even, but back in the 70s when we had Chariot of the Gods and all of those books coming out, I read them all voraciously because I knew there were answers out there and I wanted to find them because I didn't want to die with this big hole.
So is it through that through books and through learning that you realized there was something more than what we normally see out there?
I think I always knew. I think I always knew there was. I mean, I when I look back on my childhood, I used to spend an awful lot of time sitting in trees and observing people, and thinking, there's something not quite right there. So I think there's always been a knowing that there's something to find. I've always been on that quest.
It's interesting because when we sit, you think to childhood, and many of us had that experience of fantasy and elves and fairies and reading, but a lot of us lost that at some point. And yet you continued on with this quest of find, I guess, your connection with the books kept this going?
I think so. As a child, when I was sitting in trees, I used to read books like folk tales from Austria and folk tales and from every single country that you could think of. I mean, stacks of them. There was a whole series of them. And I knew that strange beings and dwarves and unicorns and fairies and things like that existed. So I think initially I was looking for that. And then as I got older and trained as a journalist, I became a lot more skeptical about things and a lot more discerning and looking for the evidence. And at that point, a bigger world opened up to me. It wasn't just the fantasy world. It was, books, as I say, non-fiction books like Chariots of the Gods, and is that possible? So then I started looking for the evidence. So that's what kept me going. I was now on a track where I wanted the scientific evidence.
No, that's a great quality when you think about the search that where you are now with interviewing people and working, finding that authenticity out there and finding the truth or many truths to consciousness.
Yeah, I think I've always known that, there's something that we need to know. And in order for the majority of us to know it, it has to be presented to us in a very grounded 3D manner, so that people can say, oh, well, if there's a piece of science over there, then this may be worth paying attention to. And that's what's always driven me. That's, why the shows I do, I'm always looking for where the science and the spirituality meet.
You know what fascinates me when I'm talking to people or thinking about myself, we have this spirit of fantasy and the childhood delight that we start with. And then we have this period in our life where we become skeptical, or we have a learning, we create this ego that has this beautiful tool of creating in this world, because we need to be grounded and part of the world, right? Yeah. And then at some point we have a shift where we can put those two together, and that becomes our life. If we're lucky enough, that becomes our life path where we're playing in both realms. Do you remember a time when that happened for you?
I do. I can remember the year. I don't remember the day. I do remember very much that I was taking in all this information and reading everything that was going. And I took it on board. It was information, but I wasn't going to say yes, to whatever it was that I didn't discover later what I was saying yes to. But I wasn't in, so to speak. I was still, okay, I'm looking at this, that fits, that doesn't, toss that out. There's a bit over there that seems to make some sense. But in 1987, which I later realized was the year of the harmonic convergence, when a huge wave of energy came onto the planet and elevated people's consciousness. But I didn't know that then. Something happened. And I remember one day just, it wasn't out there anymore. It was in here. It was as if I'd got enough pieces of a puzzle to say, I know something. I remember something. And I realized I hadn't been looking to learn. I'd been seeking to remember. Oh. And I had enough now to say, I'm in.
That's beautiful. You said that was 1987?
Yeah.
And you think about, that's just the beginning. I mean, I think that point, we hit that a lot of times since 1987, where we suddenly realize, more puzzles come together, more pieces.
Yes. Yeah.
And now we're in a period, we're looking around where there's so much being thrown at all of us that it's happening for a lot of people, where they're having these openings, these ahas.
Yeah, I think we've all known for a long time that everything is speeding up and accelerating. And if you study, say the works of Carl Kalleman, he talks about these 9 waves of consciousness that come onto the planet, and how in the beginning, I mean, you see in his book, all these charts, it shows that it was millions of years between the waves. And then once we get into the 20th century, then they started coming a lot quicker. There was one in 1987. We had one in 2012. Now we're having, more, and they're getting closer together because we're able to absorb more of it.
We're acclimating to it too, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because it seems so natural now. It's very uncomfortable, I think, this chaos, but it's not unusual. You think about what it was right before the pandemic started, and what we were thinking and what it is now. It's like, we have the pandemic, we have to wear the mask, it's not, we're becoming so moved so quickly that I think when we look back, we're going to see that those waves were happening very quickly.
Yes, very, very quickly. And, with all the evidence about solar flares and solar winds and photons of light coming onto the planet, and the photons of light, triggering our DNA and triggering memory and, opening us up to greater waves of consciousness. I think we're being bombarded right now, to be honest. And it's interesting to watch people, because many people who would never use the word energy are suddenly using it, and they don't remember a time when they didn't.
Right. For resonating. That's another word I'm hearing a lot of.
Mm.
You know what? I was talking to someone recently, and we were talking about how we want to raise our frequency. You want to be in those higher frequencies, so you're happier. Because if you're negative, you're down, you're depressed, you're very low. And we know when you're full of love and joy, you're very high. And there's more. When you resonate at a higher frequency, more good things come towards you. You create a better reality for yourself. Well, we were talking, and it turns out, and I made me think about this, that we really are in all those frequencies at once, all the time. And it's where we choose to bring out our consciousness, where we look. Have you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, I see this. I could be engaged in a piece of work, reading somebody's book because I'm interviewing them, and then I get a distraction, and I've gone from being this very high frequency, and in a split second I'm in a lower frequency, and I know it. So yes, I don't think we could make those radical shifts if we weren't in them all the time.
Yeah, and so now with everything that's being bombarded at us, we have the option to choose, but we also have to choose what our truth is, right? And how do we know? I think you and I have talked about that before, about how do we know?
Yeah.
That's
the bit that's always got me. There's keywords for the different signs, and the one for Gemini is I know. Mm-hmm. And the worst thing in the world for us is to not know, which is now I understand why that kid was, God, I can't leave until I know it all. But yes, and the knowing is so important, because what else can we trust? We can't, we're learning. We can't trust our media. We can't trust our politicians. There may be some good ones out there, but we see so much nowadays with the internet. It's also transparent that we're learning that the only person we can trust is ourselves. And so we have to have a mechanism that is able to inform us of when something is right and when it isn't.
So, and I love, we've talked about this many times about your mechanism. I'd love you to share that for a moment.
I call it the typo in my tummy, which fits in with all the editing and the work that I do. And it started because I was working on a book with somebody, and from across the room, I was able to see on his screen a typo. And he said, "How do you do that? How are you able?" And I thought about it, and I was intrigued. How do I do it? And I'd studied NLP, and I knew how to slow processes down. And so I slowed the process down, went through it in my mind, and I realized what happens, and we all do this all the time. We all do it, is something isn't resonating, something isn't right. There's a pattern. And whether it's a frequency that we can't see or a word that we can see, when there's something wrong with it, we're aware of it. So it kind of comes in, but it doesn't quite hit our brain. I say it comes in here. We see it, we feel it, we know it, we sense it here. Then it goes up to the brain. And for me, I say it's like error alert, typo. And something happens, and obviously I home in, becomes very clear and very sharp. I home in on it, and then I feel comfortable. because I found it. Until I acknowledge that, there's this discomfort here. So I realized that my gut, is my typo sorter, so to speak. It always tells me, and it does it with anything, people, anything I hear. There's a resonance. If it's there, it's truth, and if it's not there, or if you feel discomfort, so it's really only about being attuned to your own mechanism.
Being attuned to your body too, right? We talk about the different realms or dimensions of a self. You have your physical, your psychological, your spiritual, and then I call the mythic as well. But being connected with that physical part of yourself, to be aware that there's a typo, there's something not feeling right. And then putting that with this mind, this curious mind that's going to figure out what it is,
What I've just realized as you're saying that, what is interesting for me is that I was not connected to my body. I used to say to people, I could be happy being a head on a plate because I just did not feel connected to my body at all. And I knew that I knew certain things, but I thought I was reading body language. But it wasn't until after 1987, when everything, that I began to connect to my body. And so ultimately was able to recognize what was going on in my gut and how significant it was.
Well, I'm going to go back to what you said earlier. It's about remembering, right? So it's really remembering the connection you already have.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the same thing about the spectrum that we're in, all these different frequencies. It's when we start bringing our awareness to these different parts of ourselves, our physical body, where consciousness is, where we are in consciousness, it opens up all these tools for us and all these different abilities.
Yeah. And it's exciting because you never know when that opening's coming. You never know where the next aha or leap is coming in.
And yet we don't have to be passive about it and wait for it anymore. I think with all the energy that's happening, we can say, okay, I want today to learn something new about myself or about the world around me and how I fit in. I think you can put that intention out there and the synchronicities will bring you there. Yeah,
absolutely. As soon as, the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It is so true. So true. As soon as you say yes, there it is.
Yeah. And I think the students right now, we don't realize how ready we are. Beautiful. So I wanted to, before the break here, actually start talking about consciousness a little bit. And what you are in a realm where you're talking to people about consciousness all the time and about different aspects. And I love that, where the science and this consciousness meet. And where so for you, do you have a way of explaining or describing what consciousness is, or what it is for you? I mean, that's a big topic.
It is a huge topic, and I don't know that anyone could ever explain it succinctly.
Sometimes I get real quick little answers.
Yeah, I think I don't know. For me, the consciousness is, it's the ability for me to be able to be aware of yourself and what you're saying and what you're thinking and how you're thinking and what level that thinking is at. For years, I mean, I can remember for years going along and all I cared about was shopping and clothes and, the usual 3D stuff. And then suddenly something happens and you get a shift in consciousness and you become aware of that. And when you become aware of it, then you've got a choice. Is that actually what I really want to do? No, it's not. What I really want to do is something else. So for me, that's part of it, but there's so much more to it. And I think that we're all of the time, our consciousness is constantly shifting and opening up. It can't go backwards. It never goes backwards. You can't unknow what you know, but we're constantly knowing in here more and more and more. So it's like a great big beautiful flower, isn't it? Constantly unfolding.
And it you're able to play in this arena with your work, right?
I am so lucky. I am so lucky because I have reason now. I have an excuse to read and read and read and read and read, because I have to read all of the books, the people that I'm interviewing. So somehow I set it up very well for myself to be able to do that in life. And I use my gut all the time on picking the guests I want to talk to, or the books that I want to know about, the ones I want to read. And I think the more you consciously work with that, then the more it unfolds and grows, and the more of that you get back.
So I'd like to explore a little bit how this has unfolded for you with your new show, the one, the No BS Spiritual Book Club, because that is a very unique very unique book club, a very unique show, but it allows you to really play with people where they started in their journey.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as an interviewer, I get to interview lots of people who want to be interviewed because they've got a new book out or a new program or a new something, and their consciousness is very focused on that, quite rightly so, because that's what they're offering. And then the interviews that I do for the No BS book club, their consciousness is in a different place, and they're in a different place, and there's a whole other vibration around those interviews. And it's not something, it's something people notice because they're constantly telling me, it's so much more relaxed and it's so much more organic, and it's so, I won't say authentic because I think they've always been authentic, but it's vulnerability. They're so much more open because they're not focused on that. They're focusing on the growth of their own consciousness, So it's rather beautiful to watch, and I'm constantly overjoyed by it because the things that people share, you wouldn't necessarily get somebody in tears talking about their book, but they tell you about an incident in their life where they read a book and it shifted them and what that meant to them. And you see the tears in their eyes. It's a very visceral thing. So this is putting people in a whole other place to talk, which is something that, I really do enjoy.
How long have you been doing this now?
Almost 2 years, about 20, 21 months, yeah.
So, and did you envision it to be what it is now?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, when the idea dropped in, and it literally did drop in front of me as if somebody lowered a screen, I got the gist of it and I thought, oh, that's fine. And from a practical point of view, I thought that works. You offer people, you ask people to give you their 10 best books that influence the most on their life journey. Simple, and so you'll get those and then you'll talk about them. But until I started doing the interviews, I never realized, wow, there's so many things going on here. Because also the guests are saying to me, oh, at first I thought, oh God, I've got to write, I've got to find, I've got to think, I've got to go back, I've got to work at this. That's a lot to do. And in the process, they're having these amazing life reviews because they're realizing, they're going back in time and they're realizing how far they've come, where they were at that point, what that book did for them. So now they're thinking about their own consciousness. And so... Yeah.
But think about, that whole process, how beautiful it is for the interviewee to go through that. It's not just show up and answer questions about the book I've just written.
Yeah.
It's you're leading these people through something beautiful.
Yeah. I haven't had anybody who says I didn't like that. Yeah. Everybody says, wow, that was such a fun experience. I learned so much about themselves,
And the concept just dropped in. I want to go back to that too, that you trusted something that just came to you like that. And
not instantly, I didn't.
No?
Because I could see the potential in it. I saw it was a great idea. And it started because I was having a little mental private rant at the volumes of books that are appearing in the mind, body, spirit arena with huge publicity budgets behind them that really don't have much substance. And I was thinking there has to be a way, and all the good books, get overlooked because they don't necessarily have the same level of promotional budget. And I thought, wow, there has to be a way to offset that. And boom, there it was. And I did a double take and thought, well, there's a good idea. But I'm not doing it. There was no way I wanted to do it because I could see this is going to take a lot of time and energy and, it took me a year. I kept looking at it sideways. It was still there. And then it just came to me, do you know what? You're perfectly placed to do this. It's yours to do. It came to you. You're yours to do. So I did it.
And when you do it, then it becomes so natural. That's something.
Yes. And then it really started to reveal itself to me because I believe everything has consciousness, even an idea. A business, everything has consciousness. And I think these things end up doing you, because you go into it, oh, well, okay, I'll shape it this way and I'll make it look like that. And it's going to be this. And then you find out, no, it's got its own. It knows what it wants. So it does you. So that's also a great lesson for me, because I am a bit of a control freak. So, let go and let it do what it wants to do. And it's going to be far better than anything you could think of.
Yeah. And that comes with experience too. I think we realize the more we surrender to something, the better it is, actually, the better it flows. Beautiful. Yeah. I think we will go ahead and go to break. I'm speaking with Sandie Sedgbeer, and you're listening to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation. We'll be right back.
Real conscious connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
There is no greater mystery in life than you. So why not take a fully experiential plunge into the depths of your being to uncover and retrieve all the secrets and wisdom your soul is crying out for you to know? If you enjoy Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation, you'll love Adventures in Consciousness, the course. Join Jennifer in this unique 13-week series of journeys specifically designed to unlock the mysteries of yourself. Each week, you'll journey progressively deeper into the meta realm, where, freed from the limitations of your mind, you'll get to play and explore the inner and outer reaches of your awareness. The next series of Adventures in Consciousness, the course, is starting soon. Find out more and stake your place at JenniferEvanko.com.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly.
Lights out. Good night.
And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. You're listening to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation, and my special guest is Sandie Sedgbeer. Before the break, we were talking about consciousness and about her journey through consciousness with her book club and some of the things that she's done. But one thing that we were talking about was how to know what you know and her typo in the belly. And I was interested in a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with another person who considers himself the human tuning fork. He's got this ability to know yes and no, Jeff Vanderkloot. And it struck me as we were on break that you have your own tuning fork ability here with this typo in the tummy. And that's kind of served you with everything you're doing because you look for authenticity.
You know, that's very true. And while the ads were playing during the break, there was one for your adventures in consciousness. And I was reflecting, because I've experienced that, on something. And something became apparent to me, which I'd like to share. And that is, yes, my gut is my tuning fork. But I don't have experiences, or at least I didn't used to have experiences like other people do. They hear voices, they see things, you know. Some people have some incredible experiences, very multidimensional. I have not seemed to be one of those people. And so getting my information from books and from the interviews I have to have something, because I'm not going to these places. I have to have something that tells me what's real and what isn't, you know, what's truth, what isn't, what's authentic. So clearly that's my mechanism, my GPS, my typo in my tummy. However, having done some of your adventures in consciousness, I have had some of those experiences. So you opened up another level of my consciousness to enable me to do that, so that I can actually experience it and not have to rely on faith and what my gut tells me.
So this brings up a couple really interesting directions I want to go here. First of all, we have many of us sit here and look at what other people have that we don't have. So I can't tell you how many people come to me and they find out I've meditated 30 years or plus, and they're just starting. They're like, oh my gosh, I wish I, had been doing it as long as you had. But they have created a beautiful ego, a beautiful tool that manifests and creates. They might be a writer, an engineer, and so they're just going to add this part that really, as you said, is a remembrance. You're remembering that I have this spiritual side and I can drop into this meditation. Once they're just like, they focused for a while on one part of themselves and now they're opening another part. Mm. And I see that you and I work together so well because we complement each other so well. And we've worked on different parts of our consciousness and we come together. And that's the other thing I wanted to bring up, is this movement towards the collective now, where we come together and we can share. Yes, I've meditated and I might meet someone that's an engineer, and together there's things we can open up at that subtle level activate inside ourselves, that engineer inside of me or that meditator inside of that other person. And I see that in things like what you're doing with your shows, where you're exposing people to that information that you've been so curious about all your life. And you've been grabbing. You're exposing people to that.
I have to, because again, as a Gemini, I can't just have the experience. I've got to be able to talk about the experience, and I've got to be able to communicate the experience. And for me, if I can't share it with someone, I feel like I'm in a straitjacket, so I call myself a shameless sharer. I was having a conversation with a friend this morning and I said, I'm beginning to think, do I come across as if I'm being a preacher or as if I'm a know-all? I said, but it's just that I get so excited. I have to share it because I don't know what to do with it if I don't share what I know.
Well, and something I love about you too is you for someone that wasn't connected to her body, you embody the information first, and then it becomes you that you're sharing. It's natural. But you actually embody it. I
guess I'd never thought of it like that. It's just like, oh, wow, I know something and I want other people to know it so that we can then talk about it.
What are some of the exciting things you've heard about recently?
My goodness. This has been a really fertile time, the pandemic. I mean, I've been talking to so many people, so much great work being done. I had the most delightful conversation just last week, which will be aired this week, will be aired very soon, with Howard Martin from HeartMath. And I love the work that they do because it appeals to that scientific side of me, the Global Coherence Initiative. They can measure it. That's what I want, and that's what people need. They need to know the statistics and say, this is real. And some of the stuff, I said to him, you're actually, what you've been doing for 25 years with the heart's intelligence and teaching people how to access that was for this moment in time. Who would have thought, when it was started 25 years ago, that you had to, this is what you were doing. So the strides that they're making in our understanding of how connected we are, how coherence throughout the world is created, and our emotions are affecting the measurement of that coherence. So when we start thinking, wow, if I'm going to be in a bad mood, I'm literally dropping that meter down a little bit. Oh, I could choose to be in a good mood, to come back to what we said earlier, and I can raise that meter a bit. That's, when you know that, it becomes more natural to choose a positive rather than a negative.
It becomes, we can think that it's real natural. We still have that human side of us where we just,
of course we do,
being that,
but we can't unknow what we know. So now we have a different consciousness and we're aware that we've got that side of us. So, we've got a choice.
We've got a choice. And I like to remember that we can embrace all of it. We can embrace that little part of us that when not to be hard on ourselves, when we're just down and we can't get up.
Yeah.
There's a reason. Maybe it's a time to move into the collective, if you're just so down, you need to get out and enjoy fresh air, be with nature, be with other people. And that, and share because it's such a richer life when we have the depth of all those experiences, of all that resonance.
I agree. It is important, to be where you're at and feel it and acknowledge it. But then what I also think is if you're a little bit more conscious about it, it's easier to laugh at it. It's easier to bounce back. You can have your pity party or whatever, or your rant in the air, and then you can look at it and see it rather than stay stuck in it.
Exactly. And you can also, when you look at it and see it, see what is there for you, because in every moment there's some kind of gift or something that is there for you. Yeah. And if we stay in habit and I feel like this, and so I'm just going to go down that drain right now, or you can look at it and say, oh, there's some energy here. There's something I can play with, move and shift.
Yeah. I mean, I think consciousness cannot completely be captured and described because it is so vast, and it's what we are. And, it's the totality of what we are. And that's such a big thought that it's hard to get your head around.
Exactly. Our head's meant to help us focus down in, right?
Yeah. Mm.
And that's the playground we're in. When you realize that, then you realize, okay, if I can't, you want to learn it all. I forgot.
I do want to learn it all. I do. I want to be able to say on that tombstone, yes, she learned it all.
And when you realize you have a certain territory to play in your conscious experience here, then
one of the things, is answering what you first asked about, what am I finding, is I love it when I see coming at me from so many different directions, new thoughts are being embraced. We're making moves. I mean, one of the ones that's fascinating me is how much attention is on dying and conscious dying. And again, I interviewed someone last week who went through this, and oh my God, it's time that people understood what a natural transition dying is, and just to see that there's so many people writing books now about conscious dying, a good death's guide, or all kinds of things like that are coming out, is that we are beginning to understand that there's a lot more to us, and when we make that transition, we want to do it in a way that's going to be helpful rather than not.
I think that's a very important topic, actually, especially right now with we were talking the other day. This is the commemoration of the death season. Celebration is at the end of October. Halloween, all of these different things, where many different cultures put a day for thinking about death and what it is, and celebrating those who've passed, and being with them. But what does conscious death mean, though? That's the.
I think that's, well, I don't know because I've not done it, but I would think that it's got to mean that you have an awareness that you don't end, that you're moving into another plane of existence or dimension or frequency, and you continue in a different form. And therefore, it's an acceptance of that. And if you're going to accept that, then as you're getting ready for any journey, you want to be prepared, don't you? Mm-hmm. You want to pack the right clothes and prepare yourself, instead of bemoaning your fate or, regretting things. You can think ahead. You can do the things, say the things that you need to say so that there won't be regrets on either side, you and the people that you're leaving behind. Answer those questions, I would imagine, that people might have, and do it knowingly rather than kicking and screaming.
Yeah, this is an important exercise, I think, no matter what age you are, whether you think you're dying or not dying. Right, we're all dying, obviously, but I think being ready to die at any moment means having said the things you need to say to loved ones, having completed what you need to complete at any moment. Because from my understanding, when we die, there's a period of when you don't know you're dead yet. You might have this period of confusion and feel like you still need to finish something or complete something that's going to slow down your progress to walk through that next transition into that next life or that next place, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's true. I found myself thinking through the pandemic that if I were to die now, I think I'd pretty much, I wouldn't be saying, oh God, I don't know it all yet. I'd be saying, I know enough. I know enough. So that wouldn't be a problem for me. And I also feel that I've done a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I haven't done everything, but I've done enough so that it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. There was a good, actually, we talked about a wonderful process of when you go to sleep at night, just to recapitulate your day, to think about what you've learned that day and what you did from the minute you woke up to where you go to sleep. But then also think of the things that you haven't completed, that you haven't finished, so that you want to have very few of those when you go to sleep every night.
Yeah. Well, that's the same. It's a conscious act, isn't it, that you're working on there, and it's the same thing with dying. It's a conscious act. It's I can choose. I can choose how this will be. I mean, this woman's book was just phenomenal. The way she described this is what her husband wanted.
You hadn't mentioned that yet.
Pardon?
You hadn't mentioned that yet about.
Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you about the book another book that I interviewed someone about last week. A lady called Becky Kuhn. I mean, amazing story, and I think it was 20 days changed everything, and they got very short notice of his illness. And they thought they might have 2 months, but they actually only had 20 days. And at first they started out thinking that they had the ability to change this. They were very conscious, spiritual. They meditated regularly. They thought, we can change this. But on the 10th day, he said, no, that's not my path. The path is for me to go, and you're going to write about it. And this is what we came here for. And they did everything consciously. I mean, from the room that he, moved his bed into, which was his music room, which brought him so much pleasure, to the music they were playing, to the scents in the air, to the meditations they did, to the people who came by and how they were with those people. I mean, everything was done very consciously and lovingly. And, it reminded me of George Harrison, because he wanted to die consciously. And in Martin Scorsese's documentary of George Harrison, he has an experience where he could be facing death, and he realizes this is not the way I wanted to go, grappling with somebody who was, burgled my house. But when he did die, his wife said that the whole room, when he took his last breath, she said, let's just say you didn't need lighting in that room. Now that, I think, is just phenomenal. And what a gift to the people that you're leaving behind, who are there with you, watching you pass.
Mm-hmm. And you hear about all these near-death experiences where people talk about how beautiful it is and how we have such fear around dying. And those that have experienced a part of it, there's just love, there's just bliss, there's just light.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the ego, isn't it? The ego can't bear to think that it's not going to exist and be able to do what it wants to do. But we do exist. And, I believe we continue to exist. I think the evidence is pretty clear, actually.
Especially in all your research, right?
Well, it's lovely when I get, I have an idea and something begins to form, and then pieces of the puzzle, come together to turn that into a big picture for me. And then suddenly I get something from somebody who says, oh, we've just done this piece of research and here it is. And it's like, wow, yes, there it is. The puzzle's finished. Yeah. Check that one off. I know that one.
So there's a lot of synchronicity around you as far as this work and the people that you're coming in touch with.
Yeah, I mean, I used to think I was just, going along and pleasing myself, but you get to a point where you think this isn't just, there's more to this than meets the eye. You're guided, you're directed, you're drawn, you're attracted, and it's all for a reason.
Isn't that exactly the way we want to get to that flow of it just unfolding easily, effortlessly, and in the direction that just thrills you, ultimately.
Yeah. And even when it doesn't thrill you, like many people are experiencing now with the pandemic, if one can look, as you say, for something in it, something that you've gained. I mean, so many people are saying, I don't want to go back to work. I want to save that commuting time, and I want to save that commuting money, and I want to do something else with it. Or, wow, I'm enjoying walking in the forest, seeing the trees. I'm enjoying taking a bike ride or spending time with my kids. There are gifts in everything.
I mean, of course, the pandemic has been very hard on some people and tragic. But if you look back at this last couple of years now, how long has it been? Oh, my gosh.
21 months, yeah.
Yeah, 21 months, wow.
Since the first lockdowns, yeah.
Right. But you look back at this period and how many blessings we have had and how many openings and how many changes in people, like you said, not wanting to go back to work in the way we did before.
And if enough people feel that way, then clearly we will change the way people work. So there's one massive change. We'll change. Look at kids learning. So many of them had to use Zoom. So some of those changes will stick, because people are finding different ways of doing things. And they can't but help, the climate crisis, because fewer people will be traveling on trains and fewer people will be, doing certain things. It's not perfection, but there are changes happening because of it.
Well, and I'll speak personally. I find when you do come together with somebody that you haven't seen for a while, there's a quality of like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to really be with you and not on Zoom,
Yes.
We're appreciating that much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
That connection.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how disconnected we had to become to really value how important connection is.
Do you remember all those memes that were going around and all the pictures at the beginning, within a couple of months of the first lockdowns, where people were saying, look at this river that was so polluted and now it's clear. Look at the light pollution. Look at this, look at that. And you think, oh, yeah, I mean, all of those things that now that we've taken a break from how it was, we've got the opportunity to see how it could be again.
And then, I mean, there's another whole level of consciousness when we think about the environment around us and the world around us and the consciousness there. As you said, it's in everything.
Yeah. So, I can't really answer your question about what consciousness is, but I think it's everything. I think it's everything. I think the universe is conscious, and we're part of that.
Well, and I think that question is always just to start us thinking, because we take it for granted that I know what consciousness is, so you must agree with what
I'm conscious. Yeah,
of course. But when you think about it, consciousness dimensions, that means so many different things. There's certain words we have in our language that we have a context for it, and people may not share our context. Yeah.
So maybe another question would be, how conscious can we get?
Yeah, I like that one.
How conscious? Wow. Who knows? Because we don't know what we don't know. But who knows? If we start asking that, maybe that will start opening up to us.
And that I think is very important. If we start asking whatever, it's not so hard to have the answers. It's hard to have the questions.
Yeah.
And if we start having those questions, we can create and find the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is why I like bringing the science in, because then it opens up someone who's got a closed mind to say, well, if that's true, then what else might be true?
I'm thinking again about how you said if somebody has a closed mind, and how we create our realities, whether it's a closed mind or an open one full of curiosity, and each reality, respecting each other, that each reality is real to that person, but also
absolutely,
it's the paradox. Yes, it is completely closed and consciousness is just inside my body. For that person, it is right there, and for the next person, it's everything.
Yeah, and we can't decry it. It's just a case of that's where someone's at until they're not.
Yes, it's funny when I've spoken to somebody who's a chemist, and he's very scientific, and consciousness for him was just in his own body. I've known him for 40 years and never realized when I'm talking about remote healing or energy work or the things, under intuition, understanding, he has no way to comprehend that because it doesn't exist in his reality. There's no way, if consciousness is just in his body, there's no way I can affect his consciousness with my energy or anything else.
Should I share something magical with you?
Please.
My grandson, you've heard me talk about my grandson, and he can be very black and white. He's autistic. He's on the spectrum, very high functioning, but very black and white. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in all of this stuff. I got a text from him today. Nan, did you feel that? No. What? I don't know. He said, but about 45 minutes ago, it was as if a wave of energy came through me. And for a split second, I think I had a deja vu experience. And then I kind of forgot it. And I just know it was to do with this. And I said to him, and he was at work, and I said to him, call me when you get home, we'll have a chat about this. Now, that, is somebody who, closed mind, no, science, don't believe in this, don't believe in that, who's suddenly having an experience that is showing him something different. So that's a an awakening on some level. That's elevating in consciousness on some level, because it's something he's never dealt with before.
And isn't it beautiful? It comes in his own time. I mean, we're to allow him to be black and white science, and then when he has that experience, to be there to talk to you about it. It's beautiful.
So I'm excited to talk to him some more about that. And
I think we need to be ready for more of that, for more people to have these experiences, because it's scary when, I think one of the hardest things is to trust some of these subtle messages we get, or these synchronicities, or these things, these knowings we have, for somebody that's so used to black and white, to open up and trust something that's coming from inside of themselves, and how to find that trust.
Yeah. And I think, more of us need to be ready. I don't mean force opinions and force our, beliefs on others, but be ready to be available when someone has an experience like that.
And share our stories.
That's so important. Yeah.
Sandie, thank you so much for sharing your stories today in conversation. I can do this all day with you, and we're running out of time. So I'd like to invite everybody to check out Sandie Sedgbeer's website. Sandie, you want to share that in your...
That's sedgbeer.com, and you'll find the No BS Spiritual Book Club there as well. And
please check that out. It's one of my favorite shows. And thank you for joining us. Please come to my website, jenniferevanko.com. And we have the Countdown to a New Beginning is there for your enjoyment. It's a meditation series of 12 meditations to explore time. And we will see you in a couple weeks. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jennifer.